The photo loaded automatically, the way they always do, into an album Marcus and I made when our oldest was still in diapers. I almost didn't open it. I was mid-scroll looking for a picture of our son's school play from earlier that week when I saw it instead. Marcus at a restaurant I didn't recognize, his arm around a woman who wasn't me, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. I stared at it for almost a full minute before I did something that surprised even me. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I closed the app, and I decided to wait. I want to explain how that album even existed, because it matters to how all of this unfolded. Marcus and I had been married 9 years. 2 kids, a house with a mortgage we complained about but managed, a life that from the outside looked steady. Years earlier, when our daughter was born, we set up a shared photo album so our parents could see pictures without us texting 50 photos a week. It became a habit neither of us thought about anymore. His phone backed up to it automatically. So did mine. We hadn't touched the settings in years. That night, after I saw the photo, I sat on the edge of our bed for a long time, phone face down in my lap. My first instinct was to march downstairs and ask him who she was. My second instinct, the one I actually listened to, told me that if I did that, he'd have an explanation ready before I even finished the question. I'd worked with children for over a decade by then, teaching 3rd grade, and if there was one thing the job taught me, it was that people rarely tell you the truth the moment you demand it. They tell you the truth when they think no one's watching closely enough to catch it, so I decided not to react. Not yet. The next morning, I called my sister Ines before Marcus was even out of the shower. "You need to see something," I told her and sent her the photo. She called back within minutes. "Who is that?" "I don't know. I don't recognize her. What are you going to do?" "Nothing yet," I said. "I want to know more before I do anything." "Renee, that's not nothing. That's him with his arm around someone. It could be a work thing, a colleague, I don't know. But if I go in swinging and I'm wrong, I look insane. And if I'm right, he'll clean everything up before I get a real answer." Inns was quiet for a moment. "Just don't wait so long that you start making excuses for him instead of gathering proof." That stuck with me more than I let on. I didn't go looking for anything I didn't already have access to. I wasn't going through his phone or his email, but I started paying attention to things that had always been sitting in plain sight, things I'd simply never bothered to notice before, because I'd never had a reason to. Our family calendar was shared between our phones, the same as it had been for years, mostly used for the kids' appointments and school events. About a week after I saw the photo, Marcus mentioned in passing that his work trip the previous month had been quick, 2 days in and out. "Wasn't that the one you left Thursday for?" I asked, not thinking much of it in the moment. "Yeah, back Friday night." I didn't say anything else, but later that night, out of simple curiosity, I checked the shared calendar. His flight confirmation, forwarded automatically to our joint travel folder from years earlier, another setting neither of us had thought to change, showed a return flight on Saturday, not Friday, an extra day, unaccounted for. I didn't confront him. I wrote the date down in a notes app on my phone, in a folder labeled simply school stuff, where I knew he'd never think to look. 2 weeks later, a second photo appeared in the shared album. Same woman. A different setting this time, some kind of work event, the two of them standing closer than colleagues typically stand, her hand resting lightly on his arm. I showed Ines again. "This isn't nothing anymore," she said. "I know. So what's your plan?" "I want the whole picture first, not half of one." Around that time, Marcus started mentioning a name in casual conversation. The way you mention someone you've stopped being careful about hiding. Lauren from his company on a different team, someone he said was helping with a cross-department project. "Lauren again?" I asked one evening, keeping my voice as flat and uninterested as I could manage. "Yeah, she's actually been really helpful with the client stuff. Smart, doesn't waste time in meetings, which is more than I can say for half that team." It was such a small, ordinary thing to say, but he said her name 3 more times that same week, in contexts that had nothing to do with needing to mention her at all. I started to understand something about the way people behave when they think they're safe. They stop editing themselves, they get comfortable. They talk, not because they want to confess, but because the habit of hiding takes energy, and eventually it slips. I asked him one question on a random Tuesday, as casually as I could make it sound. "Does Lauren travel much for the cross-department stuff?" He answered so quickly, so much more than the question required, that it was almost its own kind of confession. "Sometimes." I mean, it's not like we're always together or anything. It's usually just when there's a client meeting that overlaps, and honestly, the travel budget's been tight, so it's not like it happens all the time. I hadn't asked about the travel budget. I hadn't asked whether they were always together. I'd asked one simple 5-word question, and he'd built an entire defense around things I never brought up. That was the moment I understood, with total certainty, that this wasn't a work friendship. I didn't say any of that out loud. I thanked him for the answer and changed the subject to what we were making for dinner. By then I had a pattern laid out clearly enough that even I couldn't argue myself out of it anymore. 2 photos 4 months apart. A trip that lasted a day longer than he told me. A name that came up too often, followed by explanations for things I never asked about. I wasn't guessing anymore, I was documenting. I met with a family law attorney named Denise Okafor the following week, mostly because I needed to understand what any of this actually meant, practically, before I did anything else. I want to be honest with you, she said, once I'd laid it all out. Infidelity by itself doesn't automatically get you a better outcome in most places. Courts generally care more about finances, parenting time, things that are concrete. But a documented pattern like this, dates, discrepancies, behavior that can still matter in negotiations, especially around scheduling and custody discussions, because it speaks to reliability and judgment. So, it's not nothing. It's not nothing. It's just not a magic solution either. Keep what you have. Stay calm. Let's build this properly before you make any decisions. I decided I wasn't going to keep circling this indefinitely. I picked an evening ordinary on purpose. Dinner finished, kids upstairs, and I asked Marcus one direct question, the same measured tone I'd used with him for weeks. Why does Lauren's name keep coming up so much? He set down his fork. For a second, I watched him try to find the easy deflecting answer he'd used before, but something about the directness of the question asked so plainly after weeks of small ones seemed to catch him off guard. It's not what you think, he started. We've gotten close, working together so much, and I know how that sounds, but nothing happened until. Until what? Until the conference in March. It wasn't planned. It happened, and I've been trying to figure out how to even talk to you about it, because things between us have felt distant for a while now, and I don't know, I guess I thought. He kept going, past the point where I needed him to. He told me about the extra day on the trip, framing it as something that just happened rather than something he'd chosen. He told me Lauren didn't know much about our marriage beyond that things were complicated. He told me without me asking a single follow-up question, nearly the entire timeline I already had written down in my phone. I already knew, I said quietly, once he paused for breath. The March trip, the extra day on your flight back, the photos in the family album. His face changed completely. The family album? It still backs up your phone, Marcus. It has for years. He sat back, and for the first time in the conversation he wasn't explaining anything. He was just staring at me. How long have you known? Weeks. And you didn't say anything. I wanted the whole picture, not half of one. He didn't have a response to that. For the first time in 9 years, I watched him run out of things to say entirely. I called Lauren the following week, briefly, because I wanted to hear directly what she believed she'd been part of. He told you what, exactly? I asked her. That things were complicated. That you two had grown apart, not that you didn't know. I didn't. There was a long pause on her end. I'm not going to pretend I feel good about any of this, she said finally. I'm not asking you to, I told her. I just needed to hear it from someone other than him. We didn't talk long after that. There wasn't much left to say between the two of us, and I didn't need there to be. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. Marcus and I sat down more than once. Calm conversations, focused on the kids' schedules, the house, what a fair separation actually looked like in practice rather than in anger. Denise helped us put together an agreement that accounted for the documented pattern, not as punishment, but as part of an honest picture of where things stood. It wasn't dramatic. There was no courtroom moment, no dividing everything he owned. Just a fair, negotiated arrangement that reflected the truth of what had happened, instead of the version Marcus had hoped I'd never see. I found a place close to the kids' school, small but entirely mine. Inez helped me paint the first weekend I moved in, the two of us working in comfortable silence most of the afternoon. Do you regret waiting? She asked at one point, stepping back from the wall we'd just finished. No, I said. If I'd confronted him the night I saw that photo, he would have had an explanation ready. Instead, he told me everything, because he thought I still didn't know. For weeks, I carried a secret I hadn't asked for, waiting quietly instead of reacting, because I understood something Marcus never gave me credit for. The truth doesn't usually come from asking the right question at the right moment. It comes from paying attention long enough that someone forgets you're still watching, and I finally understood that patience had given me something anger never could have. The whole picture, not half of one.